sorry, Rob Rihos, Joanne Wabnick, Secretary Melissa Cancro, and Treasurer Sonia Varillo. Before we get started, did you know by attending this webinar, you could qualify for a leadership development pin? Here's all you have to do. You can attend at least 6 of this year's electrifying webinars, soak up all the knowledge like a sponge, apply what you've learned in your unit or your district or your region, and show us all how you're making waves. Once you've nailed these steps and wowed us with your leadership skills, you'll unlock the secret treasure, which is the Leadership Development Award pin. It's not just a pin, it's a badge of honor that says you're a rock star, leader in your organization, and you're doing big things. So please be on the lookout for tonight's question, which we'll be telling at some point during this presentation. Without further ado, I'm happy to introduce our webinar co-host, Jackie Wilson, our leadership training specialist. Jackie?
Thanks, Mary, and thanks to our entire executive committee for doing this presentation for us on how to run an effective meeting. During a presentation, which is recorded and is being taped as we speak as well, we'll periodically stop in order to ask questions of what just happened during the meeting to help you get a better insight into how best to run the meeting. Please feel free, in addition, to ask any questions in the chat box, and at the very end, we can address those if they have not already been addressed. Okay, so let's get started.
And Jackie, I'm going to kick us off if that's okay and turn things over to everybody else. My name is Kyle Velikopitsky. I am Executive Director, and I am so excited to welcome you. Give me 1 second to the first meeting of the New York State Executive PTA, and it's being conducted in the second week of September. So we're all going to pretend it's the second week of September. The May and June meeting, just so you know, were canceled as a reminder due to the fact that this unit could not establish a quorum. The meetings were not rescheduled, unfortunately, as a reminder. Announcement flyers were emailed and gave the meeting start time as 7:30 p.m. The New York State Executive PTA had a very successful membership drive with the support of the school administration and staff. The agenda for the meeting was emailed to you all and available on the school website. Quorum for the meeting is 18 members. So remember, we have to hit 18 members. 12 people have arrived, including officers and principals. And I'm going to turn things over to the president of the New York State Executive PTA. I'm really glad that we could finally, hopefully, get quorum to have this meeting now the second week of September, because we missed the last 2 meetings. I'm going to turn things back over to you. Thank you.
There's no sound.
Jackie, before we share that video, we have to hit that share sound button. So can we stop that share and hit that sound button?
And we have to back it up.
Okay, so where, I'm trying to pause it. Share sound being
Yep,
where?
so you have to go all the way back out. So let's get out of that screen.
Okay.
You can just X right out back to your screen.
Okay.
We're going to start over. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Sorry for the delay.
That's okay.
And
you're going to go back to the bottom of share screen.
Okay. I got to get X's out. Nope. All right.
And then you're going to hit share screen. And then before you hit share screen, on the left-hand side, there's a small button that says share sound.
Okay. Nope, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Oh, I think I lost my, hold on 1 minute. I lost my video. Let's try again. Oh, I gotta go back. Sorry about that.
No worries.
There's usually 2 check boxes, Jackie. There's one to optimize for video, and then there's one that says share sound.
Okay, let me just pull up the video again.
And while Jackie's doing that, this is really a great workshop that Helen and the executive committee presents at both our summer leadership conference and our convention to really walk through what a meeting looks like, what happens when there's interruptions, what happens when things might not go a certain way. And in really exciting news, the team is going to kind of provide some scripts for you all that we're going to be able to post online. There's also some scripts in the resource guide that you guys can use for your meetings as well, as Jackie preps this. So be on the lookout for those materials as well when you try to figure out how best to work through your meetings, when you may have unexpected blips and bumps and things that might go a little bit awry sometimes with meetings. And we all know that happens sometimes.
All right.
So again, you're going to hit share screen, but before you actually hit share button, you're going to hit that checkbox, Jackie.
Okay, I'm just pulling up the video now. Nice. Okay, so I go back to share screen. Okay. Okay, and now pull up the video. Do not see share.
It was before you got to that screen, Jackie. Is this in the PTA? Is this hidden in our PTA box?
This now I have to go back again. All right, so if I do share screen again, stop share. Okay.
Do share screen, and before you actually
Right.
hit share, on the
Okay.
left-hand side, there's going to be a little box that says share sound.
Oh, now I see. Sorry about that. Okay.
It's okay.
There we
It's hard
go.
to find sometimes. And then you're going to
Okay.
share that screen. You're going to play that video. Nice job.
Okay.
It's tricky.
Finally. Sorry about that. Okay.
No worries. We're all new at this technology. You're doing a great job.
Okay.
Will everyone please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The meeting of the NYS Executive PTA will please come to order. Welcome to the NYS PTA meeting and the start of the new school year. My name is Helen Hoffman, and I am the current PTA president. I am also the nominated candidate for president for the 2024-2025 year. We will be holding our elections during the meeting in a little while. The NYS Executive PTA is hoping to accomplish many things for our school community this year. The executive board has been working virtually over the summer to outline a few projects to propose to you tonight. This is your PTA. We want to involve everyone. We will begin our meeting with a reading of an inspirational poem by our first Vice President, Amani Messiah DeGame. Amani?
Thank you, Madam President. Priorities. 100 years from now, it will not matter what my bank account was, the sort of house I lived in, or the kind of car I drove. But the world may be different because I was important in the life of a child. Thank you.
Thank you, Amani. I would like to introduce our secretary, Melissa Cancro. Melissa, do we have a quorum?
Madam President, as per our bylaws, we need 18 members for a quorum, and we only have 13.
Madam President, I have noticed that 6 more people have just walked into the meeting.
Thank you, Sonia. Anyone who just joined the meeting, please sign the attendance sheet.
Thank you, Madam President. We now have a quorum.
Thank you, Melissa. The meeting rules were included on the agenda. I would like to remind everyone of these rules. A, there will be a maximum 10-minute discussion for any order of discussion of business. B, committee reports should be summarized in 2 minutes. C, raise your hand if you wish to speak and wait to be recognized. D, only one member may speak at a time. E, each member must have a chance to speak before speaking a second time. F, each member will be given 2 minutes to speak. G, the chair will appoint a timekeeper and an auditor for each meeting. H, all members must show respect to one another. And I, have fun. I have appointed Joan Wapnick as the timekeeper and Amani Messiah DeGane as the minutes auditor for the meeting. Melissa, can you please read the minutes of the previous meeting, which was our April meeting?
The minutes of our last meeting were emailed to each member the first week of school, along with announcement of this meeting and the proposed budget.
Since the minutes were emailed to the membership, are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are adopted as presented. Is there any correspondence?
We received a note from Sydney Prescott and Zach Giappo thanking us for the senior award of $800 that they were given in June, and a letter from Lucille Vitale, who has a concern about the quality of the playground at her elementary school.
I'm familiar with Mrs. Vitale's letter and the issues that they are discussing. We will bring this forward under new business. Treasurer.
$0.97. Total receipts was $295.86. Total disbursements was $145.40. And our balance as of September 1st is $2,607.43.
Are there any questions? Or if there are no further questions, the treasurer's report will be filed for audit. The audit committee conducted the PTA audit over the summer. Joan Wapnick is the chair. Joan, would you like to give the audit report, please?
Yes. The audit committee met on July 1st, and we found the books of the NYS Executive PTA to be in good order. Madam President, I move the adoption of the audit report as presented.
This is a committee report and requires no second discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion has been adopted. Thank you, Sonia and Joan. Sonia, would you please present the proposed budget for the current school year? The report was also emailed with the agenda.
Thank you. The Budget Committee met over the summer via Zoom and submits the following budget for approval. As you can see, there are expected revenues of $2,500 from the book fair that is scheduled for January and expected expenses of $2,500 for the Pick a Reading Partner program. On behalf of the Budget Committee, I move the adoption of the 2023-24 budget as presented.
Are there any questions on the budget? Hearing,
Okay, so looks like we have finished the first two sections. We finished the first two sections. Hold on.
Jackie, are we gonna have questions now?
Yep, trying to stop share.
You are
You're good.
stop share.
You're
You
good,
can
Jack.
start us off with our first question, Jackie.
I'm ready.
Okay. Is it okay to begin a meeting with the pledge and inspiration?
Thank you, Mary, for the question. Opening ceremony or inspirational moment is optional and not required. But it's important to remember that PTA is non-denominational. So if you do have an inspirational message, it should not be religious or a prayer to God. Parliamentary procedures for opening ceremonies is if you're going to have the pledge goes first, and the optional inspiration message would be second. If you do say the pledge, you have to make sure that a flag is present when you do say the pledge. And personally, if your unit has always said the pledge, I do think that you should continue with that tradition. And I want to talk about an inspirational message or poem. It's up to you. I, as the president, always like to give the opportunity for somebody to give an inspirational message because it set the tone for the meeting. And a lot of times we needed that inspiration during certain times of the year. And remember, the president is the one who creates the agenda with the help of the president, with the help of the secretary. Sorry, the president may make the decision to add an inspirational message or not. Thanks, Mary.
You got it, Helen. I've got one more question for you.
Got it. Go.
How should the gavel be used?
Okay. Got it with me. The gavel is a very powerful tool. So as per Robert's rules, the gavel is wrapped only once at the beginning and once at the end of a meeting. It can also be used to bring members back to the business during a discussion. If you are banging the gavel like this constantly, it means you have lost control of the meeting and you absolutely don't want that to happen. If you need to take a break to count ballots, for instance, for an election, you may gavel in and gavel out. Thank you, Mary.
I'm still having some questions, so I'm hoping you can help me.
Sure.
What does it mean to have a quorum?
Quorum, that's an important question. A quorum for your meeting is the number of members that must be present in order to conduct business. So in the current meeting that you just saw, Melissa announced that the quorum for the meeting is 18. So this meeting needs 18 members in the room in order to conduct business. Your quorum is listed in your unit bylaws under the meeting of the association section. In unit bylaws, Article 11, meetings of the association, Section 5 is where you would find your quorum number. I'm not exactly sure because I don't have a council bylaws to refer to, but if you look in your council bylaws, look for the section that says meetings of the associations. You cannot conduct any business that requires a vote without a quorum. Reports that require no action and discussion may proceed without a quorum. And you can start a meeting with the pledge and the inspirational message However, once a quorum has been established, when additional people walk into the room like we had, then the secretary would reflect that in the minutes that, so any vote that can be any vote that needs to be taken can be taken after that point. And if a quorum cannot be established, because this does happen in a lot of meetings, a vote can, let me go back up on that. If a quorum cannot be established, business requiring a vote can be held over to the next meeting, or it could be held at a special meeting. Does that make sense, Mary?
That cleared a lot of things up for me, and maybe for a question that we have later on today. My next question to you is, what is the purpose of appointing a timekeeper?
Okay, so there's a couple of reasons for that. A person like me who loses track of time, having a timekeeper is very helpful to keep me on track. So as the president, it's really helpful for me. When a motion is required for debate, it's important to have a timekeeper. And also, when there is a discussion on a topic, you want to be fair to all sides and allow all persons to speak in turn. So it's important to have a timekeeper at that point. In a virtual in-person meetings, it is important to ensure that no one person dominates the conversation. So that's the reason timekeeper is appointed.
Okay. Why would I need to appoint an auditor?
So not a lot of units do this, but this is something that I really would recommend. The purpose of an auditor is to have a backup for the meeting minutes. As the former secretary of New York State PTA, I felt that my auditor was an extremely important person to have, because when I didn't write something down, a lot of times they had written it down. In a virtual world, even in an in-person world, it is extremely difficult to keep track of all those who are speaking and what the discussion was. So this can assist the secretary in their role to ensure accuracy of the recordings of the minutes. And to clarify, the president appoints a minutes auditor, which is not the same thing as a financial auditor. The financial auditor is totally different. They keep track of the books, or they do an audit of the books of the association. This person that is appointed is just for the purpose of minutes. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I have another question.
Okay.
Why would you dispense with reading of the minutes?
Okay, so I'm going to go back a while. When I first started in PTA, the minutes from the last meeting were actually read, the entire minutes. And this took a long time. However, in the age of technology, we now have the opportunity to email the minutes, the agendas, the budgets, etc., ahead of time. And if you email minutes, remember that you must mark them proposed. However, during the meeting, there may be sections of the minutes that need an explanation, or in the minutes when the minutes aren't previously sent to the membership via email, a member can request that a particular section or the entire minutes be read aloud at the meeting. When approving the minutes, the chair will ask, are there any corrections to the meeting? And then she'll pause. Any corrections to the meeting will be noted by the secretary in the minutes of the meeting. And this is how it's done. So in the minutes that she's taking currently, what she would write is that a correction was made to the minutes of the prior meeting without specifying what the correction was. However, what she'd also do is she would take the minutes that are being approved and note what the text of the minutes, what was changed. and then she would mark it as amended. Usually, adoption of the minutes are handled by unanimous consent, which means no formal vote or raising of the hands is taken. But the president says, hearing none, the minutes are adopted as presented. It's generally a smoother way of doing things and a smoother way of approving the minutes. However, formal motions to approve the minutes is not out of order. Such a motion is normally unnecessary unless, for example, there has been a dispute over the accuracy of something in the minutes. I want to say it is recommended by PTA for the approval of the minutes by consent over making a motion. And it's important to note, the most effective meetings is where you can conduct business in an orderly fashion by getting membership in and getting them out. So if it's unnecessary, then don't do it. Does that make sense, Mary?
Thank you so much, Helen. That makes a lot of sense. When should new business be addressed?
Okay, so new business is generally addressed after all pending current business and unfinished business has been dispensed with. Usually, this happens at the end of the meeting. However, it may be moved at the discretion of the membership or the president.
Thank you, Helen, for that section 1. We went through the treasurer's issues pretty quickly, so I have some questions for Sonia. Hi, Sonia. Can you discuss the treasurer's report?
Sure. It's helpful to send out the treasurer's report to the membership so that they're able to ask questions and discuss any issues. The report is only for discussion, and so there's no motion to approve it. Once the questions have been answered, the report is filed for audit, and the final audit for the year will be approved by the membership. Units can present a full budget report or simply a monthly report on expenses, revenue, membership, fundraisers, etc. And it's up to the individual unit exactly what procedures will be followed when reporting.
And what do we mean by a monthly reconciliation?
The monthly reconciliation is completed once each month by a member who is not a signatory or relative of a signatory on the checking or any banking account. It's like a mini audit, and it is a requirement from our insurance company and helps to ensure that your unit has all expenses and receipts accounted for each month. It also allows the PTA to keep a check on the budget so that it can successfully run its programs throughout the year. The statement should read like in the minutes, the books for March were reconciled on April 5th by Jane S. and found to be in good order. It is important that the statement be included in the minutes along with the name of the person who has done the reconciliation.
And that's important to note that it really is required by our insurance company. And can you explain the audit?
Sure. The annual audit, or sometimes called financial review, is a requirement in your bylaws as well as by our insurance company. It's usually completed after the last statement of the year, which is usually June 30th, has been received from the bank. And it can be done by a committee appointed by the president or by a professional auditor. It's important that although the committee is appointed by the president is actually prohibited from serving on the audit committee. It should be approved at the very next general meeting after it is completed, usually the first meeting of the year. And again, it ensures that the books of the PTA are in good order. And a simple statement for the minutes would include, like, the audit committee met on such and such a date, and the books were found to be in good order, or that a certain, professional performed an audit on the books.
And we kind of went through the budget very quickly, but there was no motion. Should there be a motion to approve a budget?
So a motion should be made to approve the budget by the treasurer whenever the budget is initially presented. Since it is a committee report, it does not require a second, and discussion and questions follow, and then a vote is taken. Any budget vote must be done at a general membership meeting and must be approved by 2/3 of those present and voting. Any changes in the budget must also go through that approval process. But some units will approve a summer budget for expenses that might need to be taken care of over the summer and before the budget for the year can be approved.
Thank you, Sonia. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's move on to section 3. Go back a bit.
Our secretary, Melissa, will report for the executive committee. Melissa?
The executive committee has met virtually over the summer with our principal, Mr. A, to discuss the conditions of the pre-K playground. We also voted to use the World of Books Company for our book fair based on the recommendations of the committee, and President Helen Hoffman, as our president, signed the contract. We have also approved offering a PART program again this year.
Thank you, Melissa. We are now going to proceed with the election of officers. Since we were unable to establish a quorum last May and June to elect our officers, we will now proceed to the election of officers. Amani Asia DeGane, nominating chair, will you please present the slate?
Thank you, Madam President. The nominating committee of the NYS Executive PTA met via Zoom call on April 2nd. Members of the committee were Dana Playton, Jane Harsha, Patty Frazier, Kelly Short, and myself. On behalf of the nominating committee, I would like to present the following proposed slate of candidates. For President, President Helen Hoffman. For First Vice President, Amani Asia DeGane. For Second Vice President, Joan Wapnick. For Secretary, Melissa Cancro. And for Treasurer, Sonia Varillo.
Thank you, Amani, and the nominating committee. We will now proceed with the elections. In accordance with our bylaws, a 2-day notice is required in order for someone to run from the floor. I have been informed by our nominating committee chair that Rob Rios has submitted the required notice for the position of second vice president. All other positions are uncontested, so we will proceed with the election. Helen Hoffman has been nominated for president. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, you have elected Helen Hoffman as president. Amani?
This should be done in the same manner for each uncontested position. According to Robert's rules, when there is but one candidate for an office, that candidate is declared elected. Members can only vote against a candidate by nominating an alternate candidate.
Now we will continue with the election for second vice president. Before we begin, I would like to review our procedures for a ballot election. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to discuss their qualifications for office. Ballots will be distributed and collected by our tellers, Mary Sotomayor and Jackie Wilson, according to our membership list. I will have the secretary write the names on the board as so. You must select only one candidate for office. Please use the blue ballot and write the complete name on the ballot. Tellers will collect the ballots and we will announce the results of the election once they have been done. Are there any questions about the rules on election? Our nominees for second VP are Joan Wapnick and Rob Rios. At this time, I would ask each candidate to give a brief introduction of their qualifications and reasons for running for office.
Once the election has taken place and the ballots have been counted, the results will be announced, so the rest of the meeting can continue.
No,
All
no.
right. So I had a few questions. Jackie, do you mind if I ask?
Sure.
All right. So what is the report and or actions of the executive committee?
So Mary, the report or actions, the executive committee will generally meet between the regular PTA meetings. So they'll have discussions and decisions. Any discussions or decisions that they make should be brought to the membership. So the report can be done by the president or the secretary who has recorded the minutes of those meetings. Actions might include things like appointing committee chairs, setting up special committees, or approve contracts with vendors for events or fundraisers.
Awesome. Can you explain the nominations and elections process?
Sure. In this scenario, the unit had elected a nominating committee at the last general meeting, but like Kyle said at the beginning, they were unable to obtain a quorum to meet in order to hold an election. So the committee did meet. They put together a slate of officers to be presented to the membership. If a candidate resigns prior to the election, the nominating committee can meet again and propose another candidate. If there's only one nominee for the office, then the election can be by voice vote. And in this scenario, there's no nay votes for only one candidate. You can only vote yes. If there is more than one candidate, then the election must be by ballot. In the virtual world, on a Zoom meeting, you will create a ballot on Google form that will go to all the members who have registered for the meeting to run the election. The election meeting is always run by the president or presiding officer. The nominating committee chair will only read the slate of proposed candidates. And once the nominating committee chair has presented the slate, the work of the nominating committee is finished.
Good to know. Okay. Can the president who is nominated also preside over the election for president?
Yes, they can, but if they feel uncertain about it, or if there's any question, it is possible for them to temporarily hand over the gavel or give the meeting over to the vice president for that election only. If it were another candidate running against the president, it would certainly be prudent for them to step away temporarily from that office when it comes to presiding over the election in the interest of being fair and for transparency. They can then take the gavel back from the VP and proceed with the rest of the elections. If the gavel is handed over to another officer, this is where the secretaries come in. The minutes should reflect to whom the president turned over the gavel and for the time specified, i.e. to conduct the election of the president. You would just mark that in the minutes. Go secretaries. Sorry, a little shout out to them.
Got it. Got it. Why do we need to have procedures for an election?
Well, whenever you need to hold an election by ballot, it's important to have very specific directions to the membership so they're aware of how the election will be run. A membership list should always be available at a meeting, but most importantly at an election meeting. There is no absentee ballots, and anyone who is voting must be a current member of the PTA. The business of the meeting can continue while the ballots are being counted and the results announced once the tellers completed their tally.
Okay, awesome. So last but not least, what is the process if a candidate who has been elected resigns from the office prior to the start of the year on July 1st?
So the election has been held. So if they resign, this becomes a vacancy in the office. This is a little confusing, but a vacancy occurring in any office during the term of the officer is filled by a vote of the executive board as defined in your bylaws. So meeting notice in advance should be made that there will be election for a vacancy in office at the next meeting. A majority vote is necessary for election.
Okay, thank you. We'll head on to the next section.
Our secretary, Melissa, will report for the executive committee. Melissa?
The executive committee has met virtually over the summer with our principal, Mr. A, to discuss the conditions of the pre-K playground. We also voted to use the World of Books Company for our book fair based on the recommendations of the committee, and President Helen Hoffman, as our president, signed the contract. We have also approved offering a PARP program again this year.
Thank you, Melissa. We are now going to proceed with the election of officers. Since we were unable to establish a quorum last May and June,
Sorry, came on the wrong one. Sorry, come back. Mhm. Not getting to 5. Little technical difficulties here. We'll do the best we can.
Jackie, I think it's section 4.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, but I can't seem to find that in the video here. Doesn't want to go. If we go to this and scroll all the way, we'll go to section 4 for me. Let's see.
Committee reports. I will now ask for a report from Joan Wapnick, Chair of the Book Fair. Joan?
Thank you. The book fair will be held on January 27th and 28th in the school auditorium. We will have afternoon and evening hours, and information will be distributed in a flyer that will be sent home in the backpacks as well as via email. The World of Books Company has agreed to adjust the cost of the books to include the sales tax.
Madam President,
Yes, Melissa.
why can't we offer refreshments for sale at the book fair that could benefit the park program budget? It might be fun.
Madam President,
Yes, Lucille.
I can donate donuts from our shop and cider from the old cider mill, and we could ask the local bakery to donate cookies. We could stop at the big box store to get things cheaply too.
Okay. These are really great ideas. I would like to suggest that this be referred back to the Book Fair Committee to study and bring their recommendations to us at our next meeting, which is before the book fair.
Yes, we'd be happy to look at this. It does, of course, add work if we did offer refreshments. So would anyone be interested in joining our committee? So if you would, please email me at vpwapnick@nyspta.org.
Thank you, Joan.
Okay, I have some questions for Lucille about this section. Okay, Lucille, and this is a couple of questions all at once. So what happened during that meeting? People were raising their hands and kind of shouting out. What could have happened to derail the meeting? What would have happened if the president had not spoken kindly to yourself when you asked the question? And what if there was no meeting before the book fair? Why would you refer something back to the committee?
Well, those are really great questions, Jackie. So first of all, what happened was that information was brought up at this meeting that should have been brought up at the committee meeting. So we had people speaking out of turn about things that should not have been brought up at this particular meeting. Offering refreshments, donuts for sale at the book fair should have been a discussion for the committee, not at the general meeting. And as you saw, the chair was very much in control. And that is really how a chair should always be. So the president or the chair of the meeting should always be in control and always speak kindly to members regardless of what is going on. So as you saw, the chair was very much in control. She did allow the members to discuss the items, but she stopped it before it did get out of hand. If the chair had not stepped in, this discussion could have gone on and gotten out of control for a general meeting. Now, If there was no meeting before the book fair, then the chair would suggest that this book fair committee might meet afterwards and consider this for next year. And what they also could do is after the event, they could have a meeting and they can discuss any issues that went on with the event. They could make an agenda for next year. So if in fact they did not have a committee meeting prior, they could always have it after and they could take it from there. About going back to committee, you asked about that. What does that mean? That means that you refer an item back to committee because it is the role of the committee to bring recommendations to the membership for discussion and approval. The committee chair has given her contact information out so that anyone with ideas is welcome to contact her. It makes it easier for the procedures of the event and allows for ease of approval and discussion. Since the committee is a much smaller group, you want to do this in a smaller setting, in a more private group than you would at a general meeting, bring up all of this information. This helps facilitate actions and resolves them in a much faster way.
Thank you, Lucille. That makes sense. So let's
Okay.
go on to the next section. Okay.
Returning to our agenda, are there any executive board members who would like to give a report?
This is where anyone who is prepared to make a report would speak. A report can be emailed to the president and secretary and to be read if a chair cannot attend the meeting.
I have a report from the council meeting held on June 1st.
Rob, please present your report.
The NYS Executive Council of PTAs has updated their bylaws. Therefore, all council delegates were instructed to present these bylaws to the unit for approval. Madam President, I move the adoption of the NYS Executive Council of PTAs bylaws as presented.
Is there a second?
Second,
Seconded by Lucille Vitale. These bylaws were sent to the membership for review with the notice of the meeting and the agenda. Rob, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, the bylaws were presented at the last meeting. The council bylaws chair stated that there were no changes to the bylaws. The council dues stay the same at $70 per unit. The configuration of the board and executive committee are the same.
Does anyone have any questions for Rob? Hearing none, the motion before you is the adoption of the NYS Executive Council of PTAs bylaws as presented. A 2/3 majority is needed for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Results, we have a 2/3 majority in the affirmative. Therefore, the NYS Executive PTA has approved the NYS Executive Council of PTA's bylaws as presented. Thank you, Rob. Please report the results of the instructed vote to the council.
Okay, I think Mary, you have some questions for Rob.
I do. What is the role of the council delegate?
The council delegate represents the unit and the council meetings and brings back a report to the membership. They are members of the executive board of the unit and may be elected or appointed according to your bylaws. It is important that units are represented by the number of delegates that are designated in the council bylaws. All council delegates are voting members of the council.
Thanks, Rob. What is an instructed vote?
Okay, an instructed vote is a special vote used by a council to approve budget, bylaws, or to take a district-wide position on items of importance, such as support for a school budget. Each member unit votes individually. The unit membership must approve the items by 2/3 of a vote. The council delegate then represents that unit's vote at the council meeting.
I see, I see. What happens once the unit takes a vote on the bylaws?
Well, then the council delegate brings back the vote to the council meeting, and 2/3 of the unit must vote in the affirmative for approval.
Okay. How many units do you need to form a council in your district?
It depends on the district. Typically, you need a minimum of 3 units in a district favorable to forming a council. Your region director can help the charter of a council for the district.
Do all units have to belong to a council?
Well, if your unit has a district council, it is the option of the unit if they want to be part of the council. Some units may object to the cost of the council dues. However, in most cases, the connection to the other units in the district and the benefits of a unified voice for the PTAs is an excellent reason to stay a member of the council.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, let's move on to the next section. We need 6, we need 7. Let's go here. And we need 6, right? Okay.
You will notice that there is no unfinished business on the agenda. I do have the results of the election for second vice president. Total votes casted were 18. Joan Wapnick received 10 votes. Rob Rios received 7 votes, and there was 1 invalid ballot. Congratulations, you have elected Joan Wapnick as our second vice president. Congratulations, Joan.
Thank you.
Is there any new business?
Yes, Madam President, it is Lucille Vitale. As you mentioned earlier, I had written a letter because as the grandparent of a child entering kindergarten, I have a serious concern about the conditions of the primary playground at this school. I've been reading articles about the dangers of some of our equipment, and the whole playground doesn't appear to be very safe.
Mrs. Vitale had shared her concerns with us in a letter we received over the summer. We met with Principal Mr. A to discuss some of these details.
Madam President, the playground is a mess.
And our principal, Mr. A, removed the swings last year, and I don't think that's right.
And I went to a PTA conference over the summer where a speaker talked about offering healthy recess for kids. And we certainly don't do that here if all we have for our kids is this small playground. Our kids are not getting enough exercise.
This is an important issue that needs to be referred to a committee for further discussion. If anyone is interested in joining this committee, please email me at president@nyspta.org.
And Jackie, you do have one question in the chat about that section.
Hi, Jackie.
Hey. We on?
Yes,
Wait.
you're back.
Okay, so we have some questions. What is unfinished business?
Okay, so unfinished business is something that has not been completed or dealt with completely. The president and secretary would know before the meeting if there is anything that is not completed or needs to be dealt with from the previous meeting. So it could be something that was noted in the minutes, or New York State PTA establishes a parking lot of items that we want to deal with at another time, or that need more time for investigation before we actually present it. So that would be what finished business would be. But unfinished business can be a motion that is pending when the previous meeting was adjourned, items that were on the agenda of the previous meeting but did not get taken up before the meeting was adjourned, and items that were postponed to this meeting. Unfinished business is not, and I'm going to say it again, is not a report about a previous activity. Those should be handled under the officer or committee reports.
I also noticed that you didn't recognize Melissa or Joan in the conversation. What was that about? What happened there?
Okay, as I had stated earlier, that the president read at the beginning of the meeting the rules, and rule C was raise your hand if you wish to speak and wait to be recognized. However, a president has the discretion to decide how to handle this type of situation. So basically, the president allowed the conversation, but knew when it was time to stop the conversation and bring the meeting back to order, as demonstrated in that last segment.
And what can be brought up in new business? How can the president address the issue about the playground?
Okay, under new business, members can address areas of interest. And one area of interest could be that a unit has never had a park program before, and they may, a member might want to start a park program in the school. So under new business, they would say, Madam President, we've never had a park program. Can we discuss that? Since it had never been discussed before, that's where it would go under new business. A member has an issue that they'd like to address. Lucille's concern regarding the playground. This would be where that would be brought up as well. The chair may not have the appropriate, and sometimes, just for instance, the chair may not have the appropriate information. So the chair would suggest that this issue be referred to committee, like we did in the last segment. The chair could ask for a motion to refer it to committee, which must be seconded. And a special committee could be formed at this time, and the members who are interested in participating in this committee. A small committee of 3 or 5 people could get more accomplished than a large group, like Lucille said earlier. Does that make sense, Jackie?
Yeah, certainly would make the meeting run a lot more smoothly, and everybody getting a chance to speak is certainly important as well. That's why we have rules. Okay, let's move on to the next section then, the last section there. And section 7, go.
And Jackie, before we move on to the next section, you do have 2 questions in the chat on that section.
Next meeting of the NYS Exec PT.
Okay.
So I don't know if you or Mary want to do them now.
Mary, you want to address those now?
We usually leave them to the end, but we don't mind addressing them now if it makes a little more sense. Hold on one second. I see a few. One is, can the nominating committee nominate more than one person for a position?
No. 1 person per position.
Okay. The next question is, is a delegate considered an executive board member?
Your council delegate, according to the bylaws, is a member of the executive board, yes.
Okay. And what does a historian do in the PTA?
Someone would like to answer that for us?
Well, it depends. Usually, there is a job description that you would create in your, you would create job descriptions in your unit to describe what it is that you'd want the historian to do. Typically, the historian is the one that will take a look at all of the different events that happen during the year. So if you start the year in September and you have a back to school night, the historian would make sure they were there to take pictures of the event and, and record it in maybe some type of binder or some type of video. Now that we have Google Drives, everything could be dropped into a Google Drive. So the historical record of what you did for the last year would be kept in that area. Also, if you have, another event like a book fair or something, the historian would would record the information, the basic information about what happened. It was a successful book drive. We made this much money. That's the report of the chair, but the historian would keep a record of what the chair is reporting. And I'm going to cough, so I have to stop.
Okay, well, let's finish up and then we can get back to the chat questions, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Mhm.
I only have one announcement. The next meeting of the NYS Executive PTA will be held on November 15th. A flyer and all the pertinent documents will be emailed to all members at least 1 week before the meeting. It is my pleasure now to introduce our principal, Mr. A, who will share his observation about the first few weeks of school. Mr. A?
Customarily, the principal is given time during the meeting to give a brief report. Discuss beforehand how much time you will be giving them.
Thank you, Mr. A.
If you are having a speaker or presenting a program, you may adjourn at this point. If you wish, use this language.
If there's no further business, before we end this meeting, rule number I says, have some fun. So
30-second dance party. Three, two, one, jump!
the meeting is adjourned.
That was awesome. I was so happy to take that dance break.
And what could have been a very contentious meeting. Mary,
Yes, we've got a couple of questions.
okay.
So before I start with the chat questions, I had some questions for you. What are announcements?
Announcements can be anything such as PTA events, dates of community events, upcoming community things such as a health fair, fun run, or certainly information from New York State, National, and Region PTA. So those are all things that can be included in your announcements, especially meeting dates for the next month, when is our election meeting, reminders about different events that are going on, et cetera.
Okay. When is it a good time for the principal and or superintendent to report?
And I think Lucille mentioned this as well. It's up to the individual unit. Have the discussion with your principal or superintendent and determine what is their best time. Also, in case they have another meeting they have to get to. Also, if you anticipate a number of questions because there's a controversial issue in your unit that might take a lot of time, you might want to do it at the beginning of the meeting when you have the most people there, and so that everyone would have the opportunity to speak to the principal. But obviously, before your meetings, you should be meeting with the principal or superintendent, whoever is attending your meeting, in order to gauge what things they think will come up and what things you think will come up so that they're prepared, and then set a mutually agreeable time for them to report at the meeting.
Thank you, Jackie. Before we go to our Q&A and questions in the chat, Melissa, I have a question for you. This is the special question that you all should be looking out for in order to qualify for our leadership development pin. So Melissa, what is a quorum for a meeting and how do we determine that quorum, which will be answered in section 1?
Just went blank, Mary. Your quorum, the minimum is always 10, and it's in your bylaws. So check your bylaws to see what your quorum is. So is that correct, Mary? I just went blank. My mind went completely blank. Like,
That's okay.
That's a thumbs up, Melissa. Perfect.
good. Like,
And this is in section 1. So if any of you are looking for some additional information there, there's an extensive piece. It's that in section 1. Thank you, Melissa. So we had an additional question in the chat. How far in advance should you send out an agenda?
Anybody want to take a guess at that one? Take a shot at that? Any of our
Jackie,
executive committee people? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll answer that. So New York State PTA has what we call our board of director procedures. And in our procedures, it says that the president must send the agenda out at least 2 weeks prior to the meeting. So what I do is I prepare the agenda. I send it out to everybody for review. I call it a draft agenda. I give them at least a week to review it and make any changes to the agenda. And then what I do is I post the final agenda 1 week before. So if possible, the answer would be send it at least 2 weeks in advance. Meeting notices are listed in your bylaws. So you'd have to look at your bylaws on how far in advance you need to let people know about your meetings. But when it comes to the agenda, I would at least give them 2 weeks notice, but a 1 week as a minimum.
And I think what happened at the meeting regarding the playground could then have been kind of squashed a little bit because people would perhaps contact you and say, we really need to discuss the playground. Can we put it on the agenda? And then it would be on there and there'd be no question about when it would be discussed. So that's a great point as well. Mary, next.
All right. Are co-presidents elected together or separately?
Co-presidents are elected as a single office. Okay, if you elect 2 people as co-president, they serve together as co-president. So yes, they are elected together. There's no one from this column, one from that column kind of deal. Okay, it's 2 co-presidents, and you could have 2 co-presidents running against a single president. Okay, and that's possible, but it only happens if it is listed in your bylaws as your unit being able to elect co-presidents.
How would you describe a president's position in the PTA?
We have our president here, so I will ask her to answer that one.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by the president's position. The president is the person that oversees everything. She is not the boss of everybody, and it is not her that makes all of the decisions. She has an executive committee that she discusses things with, and she has an executive board that helps her move the process forward. And she oversees she presides over any of the meetings of the association. So her position is to be the one that oversees and makes sure that the association moves forward. And like I said before, she is not the person that's the dictator. Presidents that, if you dictate to people what they should do or you micromanage people, they will never want your job. So it's always good to delegate as well. So the president does a lot of delegating. My committee can attest to the fact that I have delegated certain things to them and certain responsibilities. At one of our meetings, I asked who wants to do this, who wants to do this, and who wants to do that. And everybody, I gave them the opportunity. And when they didn't volunteer, then I assigned it. But that's a good practice to always do, is also to delegate. No nobody's gonna want your job. And the first thing that you do when you come in as a president is you're looking for the person that's gonna take over your job as the next person. And that is the person that you're going to kind of mentor to understand what's going on. But if you don't share with the members of your executive committee different pieces of what needs to be done, when they become president, they're like, oh my God, nobody told me that. And I'm sure there are a lot of presidents on this call that have said, oh my God, nobody told me that. So it's important that things that you may not have had done to you, that you make sure that you do to the next person. So what it does a past president's role on the executive board. Does anybody want to take that question?
We
I
have
could
a
take
few
it.
questions ahead of that though, Helen.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well,
Go ahead,
since we're
Lynn.
there, we can go ahead and answer that one.
It just
Lucille,
happened
you
to
wanted
pop
to
up when I
take,
was talking.
Lucille wanted to crack at that one. Go ahead, Lucille, please.
Sure. Well, it all depends on what your bylaws say. Sometimes a past president can be on the executive committee if they're in the bylaws to say that. However, sometimes they are not. They are really there to aid the president if the president wants the aid from the past president. So it really is decided on what the relationship is with the current president and the past president as to how much the past president is going to, let's say, offer help or be of an aid to the president. If the president just wants to reach out to a past president and say, you know, I just want to confirm this, or how did you do this last year? You could just be giving your opinion or just some of your experiences. But if you actually sit on the executive committee, then you would be expected to go to all executive committee meetings, and you would have a much different role if you were an executive committee member. So it really depends on how your bylaws state that you fit in there, if you're on the executive committee or you're just a member of the board. Not just a member of the board, but, you know, a member of the board.
Mary and Jackie, can I just, before we continue, Amani, who's our first vice president, has joined us. She was at an event and she has joined us. So I just want to acknowledge Amani Messia DeGame, who is our first vice president. She's now on the call.
Thank you, Helen. Melissa, you want to share what you were going to mention about the council bylaws quorum, council quorum? Might be different from the unit quorum. You're muted. Yeah, there you
Sorry,
go.
so I forgot to tell this because Helen, I was looking it up when Helen was talking. And so for the council bylaws, in your council bylaws, the quorum for a transaction of business in any meeting of the council consists of the majority of the executive board and at least one delegate from the majority of the membership units. So that's a quorum from council. That's a little bit different from the units.
So it's not a specific number because it depends on the number of delegates and so on. Okay,
Yes.
thanks, Melissa, for that clarification. Mary, next question you have?
If a unit updates the bylaws and change officers to be elected, when does it go into effect? Next meeting after approve or the following school year?
Any changes to the bylaws go into effect immediately upon approval. So in terms of an election, it would be at the next election cycle. So you don't stop in the middle of the year and re-elect officers. Once that their term is up, that year is up, okay, then you would go, you would have another election. Then that would be any new officers would go in as an election. But bylaws generally take effect immediately upon approval. And if you're talking about an election, it would be in the next election cycle.
One of the questions is, are there meeting minutes that will be available or shared after this webinar? They said they were great tips and they wanted to make sure they could share it.
Yes, I think Kyle mentioned that at the beginning that we will be providing, right, Helen, the script and the answers, correct?
Yes, but I think they're actually talking about a sample of minutes. And I will look back in my old files because I know I gave a how to be an effective secretary. So I believe I do have a sample of minutes that I will also share with the scripts and the answers. So the answers to the questions that were asked will be part of what will be available on our website or sent out to everybody on this call after the meeting.
Okay,
Is there a difference between co-VPs, VP 1, 2, and 3, and are they elected as a unit or individual?
the only office that can have a co is president. There is no such thing as co-VPs. You can elect vice presidents in a couple of different ways. You can elect them at large, however many your unit would like to have. You can elect them in order, first, second, third, or you can elect them by their role, such as VP of membership, VP of ways and means. So that's the way vice presidents are elected. And there are no such office, anything co except presidents, no co-treasurers, no co-VPs. And in your bylaws, it will state how your VPs are elected, either as at large, first, second, third, or by job description.
What role does a past president play on the executive board?
No, we did that already. Lucille did that, yeah.
Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
Nominating question. Once we get the nominations for open positions, do we announce everyone that was nominated at the PTA meeting prior to the next meeting? And two, if there is more than one person running for one position, is it an automatic ballot vote?
Okay, first I'll direct you to the leadership page on the New York State website where we just did last month a meeting on nominations and elections. And certainly that can give you this information. But in terms of nominating, there is a time frame by which the nominating committee has to publish its report. And it's either 2 weeks or 1 month, depending on your bylaws, okay? So that everyone, if your meeting is in April 15th, then, and you have a 2-week window that it has to be announced before, then you'd have to do it by March 3rd, 25th, or whatever, 10 days, 14 days prior. So that's important to note. And again, that is listed in your bylaws. And if there's more than one person running for a position, is it an automatic ballot vote? Absolutely. You have to have a ballot vote whenever there's more than one person running for a position.
And the last question I have here, how many terms can someone have on the executive board?
I could try.
Go ahead, Monty, welcome.
Thank you. So your bylaws actually spell out how many years and terms. Some bylaws said 1 year renewable up to 2 years. Some said just a 2-year term at some point. So your bylaws really spell out the individual term length. Even if it's 1 year renewable to 2, that's a new election every year. I do not believe that I've seen bylaws that limit how long you could be on executive if you're changing positions. So you may be able to serve on different positions for full terms. And I don't believe there are terms on most executive boards. And Jackie can correct me if I'm
Well, that would be
wrong.
the executive committee, which is your officers, okay? So we're just talking officers here. So
Right.
not the executive,
Yeah.
the executive board includes your chairs of your committees
Right.
and maybe your principal.
Right.
But for the officers, Monty is right. There is no
For the
limit,
officers.
but the term itself is limited to no more than 2 years.
But Jackie, on the executive board, if a unit had decided to put term limits, that would be something that they would include in their standing rules or their procedures.
Yes.
So if a unit has procedures, this is where something like that would be stated. And
Right.
sometimes it's important, to put this into procedures because you really don't want to keep recycling the same people in the same positions for a number of years. You really want new people to come in and learn the position. I know the reflections person has been the reflections person probably for the 6 years that she's been in the school. Her child is now graduating that school and she wants to give up the job, but because she's been in that position for 6 years, nobody wants to take it over because she's doing a great job. So I think sometimes it's important that you put only a couple of year. In New York State, we have 3-year terms for any of our board of director positions. Our coordinators are 3 years, our specialists are 3 years. And that helps, change people into a new position and bring new people. So it's not a person who has that job for umpty number of years.
And Melissa, you want to share your Chat GPT tip for secretary? I see that in the chat box?
So Sonia turned me on to the Sonia's our like tech guru on our exec board. And so GPT, you can type that in and you just put like when I'm writing minutes, she does this for a living and I don't do this for a living. So she is very professional in her minutes and mine is more casual, as you can tell. And so when I'm trying to put things, especially like the audit and treasury, don't tell Sonia how bad I am at budget stuff, but I'll put that information into the chat, say make more professional, and it comes up with this beautifully phrased cheat sheet. So I feel like my minutes are improving thanks to AI.
Good, very good tip, excellent tip. Any other last minute questions we have from anybody? Well, thank you all for attending. This was a great presentation. I thank so much our executive committee from New York State PTA, Helen, Melissa, Amani, Rob, Sonia, Lucille, and Joan. I think I got everybody. And we look forward to our next webinar, which as a matter of fact is on April 10th, and it is on bylaws and procedures presented by our bylaws coordinator, Pat Assotato. So those procedure questions, those would be a great time to be asking those particular procedure questions for Pat's assistance. Any last minute? Helen, I'll give you the last word here.
No,
And
I
I
just
apologize
wanted,
for the technical difficulties.
hey, we're what we call PTA
PTA
flexible.
flexible, yes.
And everybody's got to learn that term. If you're in PTA, everybody is PTA flexible. I want to thank my executive committee for indulging me in this how to do an effective meeting. I asked them to do it. I got them together on Sunday. We spent many hours recording. I think we only had like 4 bloopers or maybe 5, which you guys will never see. But yeah, Kyle already saw it. And I hope that I don't have the music on, but hey, take us out with the dance music. 30-second dance party. Come on, go. And thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Well done.